Okay, so we're having this topic on H.R. 2454, which is the American Clean Energy and Security Act of 2009. The affirmative resolution is that this bill should be passed, and my claims are that the existence of a man-made problem in the form of global warming exists. In a capitalist economy, greenhouse gas emitting companies are motivated by profit, and cap and trade uses the capitalist economy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Now, I'm not going to try and argue for global warming in the sense that it's man-made, because it's relatively accepted and it is in this debate, so there we go. But some facts are that in 2008, carbon dioxide emissions of the U.S. were 5,802 million metric tons. Now, that's a huge number, and relatively, like, compared to the total emissions of the whole world, we're at about 22% of total emissions. Now, carbon dioxide level in parts per million scale, which will make more sense, is prior to 1750 and up to 1750 AD was 280 parts per million. Currently, we're at 384, which is a large increase over pre-industrial revolution amounts. And the average prior to the Industrial Revolution was about 280 also. So there is a problem. Like, obviously, you can see by the drastic 100-point increase between pre-industrialized Earth and post, that man has had an impact and definitely has increased unnaturally at a rate that is not otherwise seen in the natural world. Now, the effect of that is up in debate. However, that's not where we're trying to go with this debate, and we're trying to just argue whether or not the bill should be passed so that we can reduce carbon and other gas emissions. Now, in a capitalist economy, greenhouse gas emitting companies are motivated by greed. Everyone knows the best product wins. The cheapest one or the best product will ultimately succeed. In the capitalist economy, you're ultimately motivated by profit. What do you want to get? Profit. Are you in a value position where you say, okay, well, this is better than this? No, you say this one gives me more money, so I'm going to go on this route. Now, renewable energy is not a profitable industry as of currently. What is profitable is burning fossil fuels such as natural gas, coal, and petroleum. These all are hydrocarbons and have a huge amount of carbon inside them, and in a vast proportion are the main reason of all the carbon emissions that the U.S. puts out. Now, with this capitalist system, you're not going to see any kind of change in where we get our energy from or our emissions of carbon, because there is no profit from reducing carbon emissions. There's no reason or motivation for companies to reduce their emissions unless there's some way to make that feasible or more profitable to go after renewable energy sources. And cap and trade uses this capitalist economy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Now, we're not the first to implement a cap and trade system. In fact, we're not even on the forefront for industrialized nations. There have been many different countries who have implemented or are implementing a cap and trade system for greenhouse gases. I mean, we're in 2009 here, and it says here that on October 29, 2007, that 15 governments met in Portugal to launch the establishment of the International Carbon Action Partnership. This is made up of countries and regions that have implemented or are actively pursuing cap and trade systems. Now, based off that, we can see that the cap and trade system is not a new idea, it is not an untested idea, and it is the best idea given by the fact that 15 countries are, in fact, pursuing that. Now, with the cap and trade system, it would in effect reduce the carbon emissions and in a way it would reduce, with a reduction of 23% of carbon dioxide emissions in the U.S., it would reduce the coal production by about 40%. Now, in the long run. Now that is a huge amount of coal that is not being burnt and a huge amount of emissions that are being cut. Let's see. Okay, so in the U.S. we already have a cap-and-trade system in place, and that is with sulfur dioxide. Now it was enacted by George W. Bush, or not W, but H, in 1990, the Clean Air Act, and since then it has shown 100% compliance as of 2000, and on average has seen 22% of over-compliance with companies. Now that means that companies are emitting way less carbon than they need to, in effect, because they want to have the allocations that they get under this system for future dates, and they can actually gain money from this. Yeah, and companies, when they enacted this sulfur dioxide cap and trade, they actually reduced their emissions greatly, and started installing scrubber installations, which goes along with that 100% compliance with all the companies. Now to get on to what the actual bill says is H.R. 2454. This is reading from it. Says that it would make a number of changes in energy and environmental policies largely aimed at reducing emissions of gases that contribute to global warming. The bill would limit or cap the quantity of certain greenhouse gases emitting from facilities that generate electricity and from other industrial activities over 2012 and 2050. It limits gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, sulfur, hexafluoride, and so on and so on. Now, this cap-and-trade program is a regulatory policy aimed at controlling pollution emissions from specific sources. The legislation would set a limit on total emissions for each year and would require regulatory entities to hold rights allowances and emissions permitted under this cap.